So if you look at the, agenda, he gave almost some 4 or 5 major areas. In order to cover all those 4 or 5 major areas, probably we can devote another 5 days of our time, but we don't have that much of time to cover everything. What I'll do is, I think I have prepared only 13 slides. So I'll try to summarize everything with the help of those 12 or 13 slides. Then and there, if you have any doubts, something related to the topic, you please come to the live chat, or maybe you can post it in the chat window. You can post your questions in the chat window. Otherwise, you wait for the session to be completed. Maybe at the end of the day, around 10 to 12:30, we'll have the Q&A session. So anything is fine with me. So what I'm planning to do today is, this is what the agenda which was printed in the brochure, and thanks for participating in this program within a short notice. So I'm not in the position to actually conduct the today's session, but due to some issues, I thought of cancelling it in the last moment, but I don't want to do that. I never did it in my life so far. Once or twice it happened. Because of this sort of commitment, even I lost some of the great opportunities. Even I lost my convocation where I would have received my PhD degree certificate. So because of this workshop commitment only, even I could not able to go and get my certificate from the convocation function. Anyway, that's fine. So in between, if you get any disturbances from my kid, please pardon me, because both of us are working, and my maid is morning. She just called us and then said, today I'm not coming. So somehow I'm sitting at my home and then managing both the kids as well as trying to do this session. So really sorry for the disturbances. Now coming back to the agenda. If you look at this agenda, the why academic publication is important. This is, this can be covered within 5 or 10 minutes. But if you look at how to identify the research problem, we can have a day-long workshop on this particular topic. Similarly, why papers get rejected, even for this also we can have day-long workshop. Then nuances of writing the research papers. I do whole day session on writing the research paper, especially focusing on the empirical research articles. Then structure of a good paper, and then academic article publishing process. So if you look at topic 2, 3, 4, 5, we can have 5 days program for covering these 4 topics. Of course, this article publishing process will not take much time because it's a kind of organizational activity only. So how do you submit the paper, and then what will happen once you submit the paper to a journal, and what sort of decision editors may be taking. Then during the review stage, what are the things we are supposed to do. Then once the review is completed, what will happen to our paper. So this sort of discussion only we are going to have with respect to topic number 6. But yeah, before that, we'll try to cover topic 1 to topic 5. Then after that, we'll see how best we'll be able to cover everything within this 2 hours or 2 hours, 10 minutes of time. So now if you look at why academic publication is important, I just collated some 11 points without any paper support or without any references. So I just collated all those points on my own. Beyond this 11 points also, there could be some more points. Feel free to share all those points here. But I thought that, okay, let me share only this 11 points part of this forum. So that's the reason I just collated all those 11 points here. If you look at why academic publication is important, here I'm referring the journal papers, basically journal articles, which is published by the scholars when they do MPhil or maybe PhD. Of course, now MPhil is not available in our system. Then PhD or maybe even PG or MTech or MBA program, it can be anything. So why academic publication is important? So from the student's point of view, there are advantages. From the faculty point of view, there are advantages. From the institutional point of view, there are a few advantages. like getting accreditation, international accreditation like AACSB, and then getting good NIRF ranking. So these are the few reasons why I mean the institutional authorities are putting a lot of pressure on the faculty members in terms of getting at least bare minimum Scopus indexed journals. So we'll talk more about that little later. Now try to understand from the faculty point of view why academic publication is important. So I kept only the points which is highly relevant to the faculty members. So if you look at the first point, job placement is purely dependent on publications. You submit your CV to any of the government institutes or maybe private institutes, they will tell you like how many A category papers you have, or how many B category papers you have, or how many A star category papers you have, and so on. Even in their shortlisting criteria, I know that there are some IIMs, they shortlist the candidate CV on the basis of number of A's and B category journals, I mean publications which they possess before submitting their CV to the institute. So unless you have some credible publication in your CV, even your CV may not be shortlisted for interview. So clearing the interview round is, it's a different story. But even to get interview call, you need to have decent number of publications in your CV. Otherwise, it's really difficult to, I mean, clear your shortlisting process or application scrutiny process. At least for that sake, you need to have publication. Again, coming back to the current burning issue or maybe topic that is going around the, I mean, across the country. Now in the 2022 regulation on PhD curriculum, UGC has removed publication, I mean, mandatory publication criteria. So there are advantages, there are disadvantages with respect to talking about. I don't want to question anything about the UGC regulation, but the point which I'm trying to communicate here is it doesn't mean that they are not asking you to publish the paper during your PhD time. I mean, it's a good idea to get at least 2 or 3 papers published during your PhD time, so that in the job market you will have decent, I mean, chances in terms of getting the job. At least for that sake, we need to publish our paper during the PhD time itself. Then second point is enhancement of teaching practices. In what way academic publication will enhance our teaching practices? Let me show you one of the evidence. For example, you look at some of the Western University curriculum. So I'm just trying to locate one of the course plan. I'm just trying to open organizational behavior course plan that is coming from London School of Economics. I think I used to download that course plan. I'm not sure whether that is coming or not. For example, you refer any of the Western University or maybe reputed business school course plan. In every session, at least they used to give 2 or 3 journal paper references in terms of I think that PDF file is not coming. Initially, I used to download that PDF file. Maybe due to some reason, probably they might have removed it. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's fine. Later also, if I get that course plan, I'll share it in the forum. So what I'm saying is, you look at some of the Western University course plan. So they keep for every session, either they will bring the cases or they will bring the journal papers, that too from the top tier journals like Journal of Applied Psychology and so on, in the context of organizational behavior content is concerned. So when you want to deliberate something on the basis of some of the top tier journals, you need to have some idea about your, some idea about the research papers. That is point number 1. Then point number 2 is, in most of the Western universities, they teach whatever may be the content or whatever may be the research, they do part of their academic research processes concerned. So they tend to convert their research knowledge in the form of teaching courses at the graduate or undergraduate level. Through this way, what will happen is, when they go and deliver, for example, if I ask you to speak about your PhD topic, without any references, without any PPT also, you can speak for at least next to 1 hour. But if I ask you to do the same thing with respect to deliberating some other concept, I don't think so. We are very much familiar or maybe having some expertise in terms of deliberating all those things. So what I'm saying is, when you teach something on the basis of your current research work, then the teaching delivery as well as the content delivery, that will be enhanced further by citing even your own papers or maybe bringing some other top quality journal articles from the literature. So this is again another reason why good teachers are coming from a strong research background. You look at some of the Western university faculty profiles, or maybe UK university faculty profiles. Even within India, you look at some of the profiles that is there in some of the top business schools. So probably you will be able to appreciate this. Again, you can also make some counter argument saying that the people, those are coming from industry, they're also having wider knowledge, application knowledge, where they're also trying to do better teaching than the research professors and so on. It's a controversial argument. Yes, they are good at something, but we are also good at something. But if you go with your research process, by citing some of the top quality journals, part of your teaching and learning process, definitely that will enhance your teaching practices. So that is the second reason I would like to cite here, why academic publication is important. Then the third one is solving social problems. When you want to address some of the social issues or maybe social problems, their academic research is required. In turn, that can be converted in the form of academic publication. Unless you publish that particular research output in some public outlet, I don't think so the government or maybe the policy makers, they will get to know about your research evidence. In turn, they will be able to implement that particular solution in terms of solving some of the social problems. That is also like another major reason why we need to publish some good quality articles in the public outlet. Then fourth one is, students tend to learn effectively. Again, this point is correlated with the second point. Then encouragement of research-based practice and knowledge production. That will also happen when you keep on publishes papers in the top tier journals. Then helps in building a professional career. See, when you want to grow further in your academic career, then definitely you need to have a good amount of publication. Otherwise, I don't think so you can move in the career ladder. So again, that is also like another important reason why we need to have better publication. There are institutes where you can get up to 15 lakh or 12 lakh as an cash incentive. For example, there are some IIMs there, they're giving for FT50 papers, you get 12 lakh something. For A-star category papers, you get some 8 lakh or 9 lakh something. For A category papers, you get some 6 lakh or 5 lakh something. So even you can get some extra revenue with the help of your quality research outputs. That is also possible with the help of academic publication. And then academic career growth is very much possible with the help of publishing good quality journals. That is also like another major reason why you should publish good quality papers in a journal. Then the next one is gaining respect and international presence. So without academic publications, I don't think so Shafid sir would have called me to handle this particular session. So unless I have some credible publications to show, to project or maybe to showcase my profile to the general audience, I don't think so you would have called me. So that is also like another reason. Even that will also give you some mileage in terms of cracking some of the international level job placements and so on. That is also like another reason. Then popularity of the faculty or researchers. When you want to get some popularity among your own colleague or maybe in your state or maybe in your institutes, then again you need to crack good quality journal papers. Then personal satisfaction and etc. Ultimately, Well, I mean, it will give you a lot of personal satisfaction. When you see your paper coming from online version, then you will get a lot of personal satisfaction, basically. So I felt that, okay, these are the few reasons why academic publication is important. So I just collated all those points here. You can agree with me or disagree with me, or partially agree with me or partially disagree with me with respect to I mean, saying something based on those 11 points. It's up to you. Now, we'll move on to the second agenda. The second agenda is nothing but how to identify the research problem. Then the third agenda is why papers get rejected. So first, I'll cover this why papers get rejected, and then we'll move on to the how to identify the research problem. So here I just collated these points as per the brochure information, but in my PPT slightly I have altered the order. So here I did some changes. Later part also I did some changes. So now we'll move on to the third agenda, and then we'll come back to the second agenda. Now try to understand why we get disk rejections. When you submit a paper to any journal, per se low standard to high standard journals, why usually we get disk rejections? Before that, try to understand what is disk rejection. Disk rejection is nothing but when you submit a paper to your journal, first editorial board members, I mean the editorial office will screen your paper for consistency, and then it will be sent it to the editor, and editor will read some of the content that is available in your paper. Mainly editor will look at the title and then the abstract. Definitely editor will be reading the introduction section also, and then he or she will also skim through the entire content that is available in the manuscript. Then after that, he will take the decision whether I have to send this paper to some other reviewers, or I have to straightforward manner, I have to reject it from the journal. So when the editor is taking this call to reject your manuscript without sending it for peer review process, that is nothing but disk rejections. Of course, you might be having some idea about what is disk rejections, but based on this 2020 paper, a group of editors from different top tier journals, A-star category journals, they have collated few points in terms of understanding why disk rejections happen in the top tier journals. So I just collated all those points. So it's a copy paste version of the points that is mentioned in all those points provided by all those editors and got published in this journal. So that's the point I'm trying to convey here. Now, if you look at the first point, lack of adherence to journal or author guidelines. Whenever you prepare your manuscript, whenever you are trying to submit your manuscript to your journal, please pay some attention to the journal author guidelines. Author guidelines are nothing but you go to any journal, on the right hand side or left hand side, you will have the about the journal, or maybe top of the page, you will have the about the journal, and then editorial board member. Then next to that, or maybe after 1 or 2 points, you will get something called author guidelines, or maybe author style guide, and so on. Please pay some attention to that particular component, because there editors as well as the journal editorial board members, they will give you some solid suggestions. Okay, these many words only your article should contain, and this is a citation style you have to follow. For example, if the journal is following APA 6th edition format, but you are submitting everything in Harvard style format, means there is a possibility of getting disk rejection, because your citation format is not connected to the journal format. So if that is the case, again there is a high possibility that you may be getting disk rejection. Then second reason is submission length. Usually in most of the journals, they follow 6,000 to 8,000 word count limit. There are some journals, for example, personality and individual differences, they follow 4,000 word count limit. And there are journals where they even accept 16,000 or 12,000 word limit, like AMJ and then Journal of Management and so on. But in an average, in most of the journals, they follow 6,000 to 8,000 word count limit. If it is a printed journal, definitely there will be a restriction in terms of word count limit. There is a high possibility that even because of your page length, they may be rejecting your paper. But provided if the contribution is really good, if the research work is really novel, and research rigor is really amazing, then they will invite for revision also, just to cut short some of the paragraphs that is available in the paper. Otherwise, if they don't see some potential, or if the length is too much, I mean, definitely there is a possibility that you may get test rejection. So how do we avoid this problem? So before you start writing any journal paper, you first look at the targeted journal author guideline page. There they might have given some information about, okay, this is what the word count limit which we are expecting from the prospective authors. So you follow that particular logic. So with the help of the simple logic, you can avoid this particular issue. Then the third issue for desk rejection is grammar and poor writing and formatting related issues. So grammar and poor writing and formatting related issues can be rectified with the help of approaching some of the editorial services. In each and every publishing houses, they do have editing services, but they charge huge money. Otherwise, you can look for some of the local services. What I do is, in some of my independent project works, I always look for collaborative researchers from UK or US style, or native speaker of English, who does really good job in terms of fine-tuning the paper content, because we are not native English speaker. Even if a person is coming from English department and writing some paper, even the journal will question something related to that particular writer, because we are not native English speaker. In most of the top tier journals, they expect really good English in the sense not using complex vocabularies and so on. So it should be really simple to read and simple to understand. So this can be mitigated, but because of this reason also, sometimes we get rejections from the top tier journals. And then the fourth point is lack of fit, lack of relevance to journals readership, aim and scope, and so on. So how do we solve this particular issue? For example, I have a paper where I have done some research work related to financial well-being, and it was submitted to Current Psychology Journal. Suppose if the journal is not addressing this particular issue, or if their aim and the scope is not related to this particular perspective, means there is a high possibility that they will reject the paper. For example, AMR, Academy of Management Review, they publishes only review papers. When you submit a meta-analysis or maybe empirical research work to AMR, then there is a possibility that you will get straightforward manner desk rejection, even though the research output is really good. So you need to, again, how do we solve this issue? Just look at the author guidelines, aim and scopes. Especially you read the aim and scopes, you will be able to understand what sort of papers they are expecting from the authors. Through this way, you can sort out this particular issue. Then the fifth point is resubmitting a rejected paper to a new journal without any improvement. Don't think that editors are dumb fellows and they don't know what happened with respect to your manuscript. For example, if you submit a paper to some XYZ publishing house, and let us assume that it got rejected from some journal, and now you are approaching another journal from the same publishing house, and when you submit that paper to another publishing house, another journal from the same publishing house, it will, their editorial services page, the manuscript central or maybe editorial manager page will give them some clue and some information about your manuscript, which was submitted to so-and-so journal, and because of this reason, it got rejected. And they have the facility to trace all those information from the editorial services mechanism. So what I'm saying is, don't bluntly submit the same version of the manuscript to some other journal without addressing the reviewer comments. Suppose if the reviewer comments are not seemingly good, and if you're not quite convinced with the reviewer comments, means yes, you can go and submit the paper. But if possible, in the covering letter, you explicitly say that this paper was submitted to this particular journal, and this is what the comments I have received. And I can understand, yes, there are some issues with respect to this paper, with respect to comment 4, 5, and so on. But I'm not agreeing with the comment given by this reviewer, like comment 1, comment 2. You try to justify your justifications also, why you are not agreeing with those comments. If you say everything explicitly in the covering letter, sometime that will also convince the editor to send you a paper for peer review. So your covering letter should clearly state the purpose as well as the contribution of your manuscript. Otherwise, I mean, it's really difficult to get the acceptance from some of the decent or maybe top tier journals. So through this way, you can avoid this particular issue. And then underdeveloped paper or premature submission, poorly organized and developed, or poor preparation, not cohesive. Again, this is also like another major reason or well cited reason why our papers also getting rejected. Then lack of familiarity with existing work published in the target journal, not connected with existing research conversations in the journal. So again, it's a, I mean, majorly reported issue. Why again papers also not sent it for peer review purpose. The lack of robust theorization. In the next slide also, I'll talk about this particular part. This is one of the major reason why we get this rejection. Not only this rejection, even if it is going for first round of revision, there is a possibility that because of this reason, our papers may be getting rejected from some of the top tier journals. And does not build or test a theory. Just testing a well-established theory or maybe well-established relationship that is already existing in the literature. These are some of the obvious reasons why editors are not interested to send your paper for peer review purpose. And then lack of methodological underpinning and rigor, single administration self-report survey or instrument and so on. See, cross-sectional studies are bit outdated. In the sense there are some flaw, there are some issues pertinent to cross-sectional survey. If you are able to mitigate or if you are able to justify why you are doing something with the help of cross-sectional study, that's fine. If you are able to convince the editor, that's fine. Otherwise, there is a high possibility that your paper may be rejected even during the first stage itself. And then the 10th point is insufficient research contribution or lack of novelty. Suppose if the contribution of the research work is not that great, then there is a high possibility that your paper may be rejected. Even per se, again, this can be referred as lack of novelty and so on. So you should ask yourself, so what? Suppose if you are working on a problem and if you are trying to do some research work, you ask this question yourself, so what? So at the end of the day, what I'm going to achieve? If you're doing something for the sake of publication, that's fine. You are trying to do some incremental research work. So sometime if you want to do some radical sort of research work, you should pay a lot of attention to so what question. So at the end of the day, what exactly you are trying to achieve and what will happen when I complete this research work, whether I'm trying to do some problem solving related research work or theory development related research work, it can be anything. So you should ask yourself this question. So what is the ultimate contribution of this manuscript? So in simple sense, if you ask me a question, what is research, especially academic research, I could say that after all, we are trying to do knowledge development process. If you are trying to add some new knowledge to the existing body of knowledge that is there in the literature, means I can say that is you are adding some value to the existing body of literature. So that is what your contribution of the paper, basically research contribution of the paper. Through that way only you need to assess the quality of the research work, not with the help of number of samples which you have collected, not with the help of the kind of sophisticated techniques or tools which you have used and so on. And jokingly, I had an interaction with one of the scholar and he was saying that, sir, I'm using R for applying structural equation modeling because in my school nobody has applied R programming for testing the model using structural equation modeling technique. So what? Whether you use R programming or AMOS or maybe some other software, both will give you the same result unless you change the estimation technique. So it won't add any value to your manuscript. Don't think that by playing with the data or maybe by using some of the sophisticated softwares, you can increase the rigor of the paper or maybe contribution of the paper and so on. I don't think so that will add some value. Then 11th point is plagiarism is again another major issue. So make sure that your paper is not going beyond 10% according to UGC regulation is concerned, for thesis guideline. And make sure that your paper is not going beyond 15% or 20%. Again, the self-plagiarism is another issue. Let me give you some understanding about what is self-plagiarism. For example, now you have submitted your thesis that is available in Shodhganga website, and you are trying to convert one of the thesis chapter into research paper. And now when you submit the paper to a journal, that will definitely they will do the plagiarism checking using Turnitin or cross-reference software. So it will identify from where almost pretty much of text is coming. Suppose, just a minute. Sorry, really sorry. Yeah, now if you look at the last point, I mean, self-plagiarism. So when they do the Turnitin check or maybe plagiarism checking, it will show them like 60% or 70% as similarity index. What is happening is, Shodhganga is a public repository, basically online repository. If your paper is available in any one of the online repository, means definitely that will be retrieved by the software, because that's how they have created the algorithm. Even though that is your own work, what will happen is they will treat that as a plagiarism. Actually this concept is referred as self-plagiarism. There are other definitions also available in terms of understanding self-plagiarism. So how do we solve this issue? Maybe in the covering letter explicitly you can say that I have converted my thesis chapter in the form of this research paper. We have also modified a few content related to this particular paper. Even then, if you get more similarity index, feel free to tell us the report so that we can come up with a justification, something like that you can do. Or before that, you try to scan your manuscript with the help of Turnitin software, and then you identify the sources. You will also get specific sources. For example, if the first source is catching pretty much of words from your thesis work means, so that will, let us assume that that is coming around 60 or 70%. After excluding that particular thesis source, what is the left out percentage? If the left out percentage is just 10% or 5%, means still journals are willing to publish your paper. Suppose after removing the first source that is coming from your thesis document, if that is exceeding some 20% or 30%, means I don't think so people will appreciate your research work. And there are other ways also available in terms of tackling this issue, but that is not the scope of this particular session. But in simple sense, plagiarism is one of the reason why our papers also getting rejected from the, I mean, we are getting test rejection basically. Fine. Now I'll move on to the next reasons. Any questions at this moment? Hardly people are interacting. Any questions from the participant side? Okay. If there are no questions, let me proceed further. I'm going really fast, I know that, but I don't have enough time to complete everything. So that's the reason I'm going a little faster. Yeah. Now you look at the major reasons why our papers are getting rejected. Especially, I'm going to focus on empirical studies. I'm not going to cover or focus on anything related to theory papers or maybe review papers and so on. So all those points are mainly relevant to talking about empirical studies. Basically, why papers
Sir,
are getting.
excuse me.
Yes,
Good
ma'am.
morning, sir.
Yes,
Sorry
ma'am.
to
Good.
disturb you. The
Yeah.
previous slide, you said no. From the thesis, we are doing a publication. Can you
Yeah.
explain once again, sir?
No.
That plagiarism
No,
check.
self plagiarism is can be viewed from different point of view, ma'am. For example, you have submitted your thesis to your university. Now you
Okay.
are trying to convert one of the thesis chapter in the form of a research paper.
Yes.
Now your thesis is available in Shodhganga site. When
Yes.
you
Yes.
submit your paper to a journal, when they do the plagiarism checking, definitely your thesis will be identified by the algorithm, Turnitin algorithm or any other software algorithm. Then they will get 80% or 60% as a plagiarism rate. But actually here what is happening is they are getting, I mean, plagiarism because of your own thesis content only. Are you getting my point?
Okay.
That is one version. Second version is already you have published a paper. Now you are trying to convert that particular published reference in the form of a thesis. Your thesis committee or doctoral committee or your university librarian will question your thesis by citing that this much of content is coming from this particular published paper. So we won't allow you to submit your thesis. This is second version from the perspective of thesis submission. The first version is applicable with respect to our current discussion.
Okay, sir. But majority from the thesis, we have to take the data. Based on that, we can publish. No. So how we
No,
can?
data will not be identified as a plagiarism, ma'am. The text
Okay.
content which you have reported or written in the thesis document, if the same text or if the same statement or if the same paragraph is copy pasted in your research paper, means again that will be detected as a plagiarism.
But the writing style we have to change.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
But that is not the correct solution. But yes, per se you can do that.
You can give some other suggestion also, sir, because you are saying it is
If
not
time
a.
permits, at the end, I'll share something, ma'am.
Because we heard about since during after completion of our research,
Yeah.
from the thesis itself we can do many publication.
Yes, very true. Very true.
So based on the data and the relevant details only we have to do. No, so how we have to rectify
No,
those?
data is fine, ma'am. But I mean, text content is the issue. Data is fine.
Okay, okay. So we have to differentiate the method of writing.
Yes. See, completely your thesis content and your paper content should be different from each other.
Yes.
But in most of the cases, that will not happen, right? There only we get this particular issue. Then how do we solve this problem? One is paraphrasing, but that is not the accurate solution. There are other approaches also available. Maybe at the end, if time permits, we'll have some discussion. Even I'm also not, clear about the self-plagiarism issue. Even if you talk to some of the librarians, even they are not having much clarity in terms of understanding the self-plagiarism issue. I'll take another 1 minute to share something which was happened to me. I had a doubt in 2013 when I was preparing my thesis. By the time, in 15, by the time I had a paper, I just want to keep that particular paper as one of the chapter in my thesis. Then I came to know that when those days, there is no regulation which says that you have to submit your thesis along with the similarity index. But even then, I know that there's a problem of plagiarism in the near future. Also, government may question us. So just to make sure everything, I'm not doing any mistake. So I have scanned my thesis work with the help of Turnitin software through one of my friends, because in our university, they didn't have Turnitin license. Then I came to know that this paper is catching pretty much a portion in my thesis. Then I wrote an email to one of the Western University professor, Jeffrey Greenas, who is working at Drexel University. He said that this problem is referred as self-plagiarism. If your university is accepting the scholar's work which is already published in a journal, and then if they're trying to submit it in the form of a thesis, that's fine, absolutely fine. Even if you get 30%, 60% or 80%, it doesn't matter. But the source is coming from their own paper. For example, the paper is published along with their supervisor. If that is the case, you can still convince your university. Again, that is depending upon the university policy decision. So I cannot make any comment about that particular problem. That is a response I received. I have received from that particular professor. So here, what I'm trying to say is, when you want to get into all those sort of issues, basically your paper should be completely different from your thesis work. If it is not different, then one or other way you will get this issue. Maybe at the end, if time permits, we'll have some discussion about this problem.
Thank you, sir.
Now, now I'll move on to the last point for this rejection. So the 12th point is duplicate submission or previously rejected submission. So duplicate submission is one of the seriously reported problem. If they find that somebody is doing some duplicate submission, what will happen is they have the rights. The publishing house has the rights to ban you as an author with respect to that publishing house. Once I have listened to one of the IEEE journal editor, so he was saying that we have a set of list, I mean banned author list. We never disclose it to the public. Simply as and when we receive their paper, we just reject the paper by quoting one or other reasons. But actually, we know that that person has done some mischief activities in terms of publishing their papers in the past. So, in order to avoid the future publications, so we do this activity, something like that he was saying. So, what I'm saying is duplicate submission is unethical, completely unethical. For example, you have tremendous amount of pressure in terms of getting at least one acceptance from any one of the journal, then only you will be able to submit your thesis. Because of that reason, scholars, what they do is they submit the paper to some XYZ journal today, and today itself the same manuscript may be submitted to another XYZ journal. So what will happen is this is referred as duplicate submission. If they came to know that it's a duplicate submission, then that is one of the reason why they just reject your paper. Don't think that the editors or maybe the reviewers or authors, sorry, editorial board members, they are not aware of your duplicate submission. See, it's an online error. They have one or other way to detect all those things. I can quote one more example also. For example, you are submitting a paper to one of the Emerald Journal. You are submitting the same paper to another Emirate journal on the same day. What will happen is they have the same platform in terms of managing the manuscripts, and they will get to know that this paper was submitted to this particular journal today, and the same manuscript was submitted to another journal today itself. So if that is the case, there is a possibility that in both the journals you get the test rejection. Then after that, you will be losing your credibility also. Credibility as an author, and there is a high chance that in the near future also your manuscript may not be sent it for peer review. That is also possible. So these are the few reasons why we get test rejections. Based on this paper content, I just presented everything. Now we'll move on to the major reasons why our papers are getting rejected. So in 2019, we did a workshop at our school at the University of Hyderabad, and we have invited one of the eminent scholar who was an editor, chief editor of Academy of Management Journal. Academy of Management Journal is considered as one of the premier journal in management domain. So he came all the way from Singapore, that is NTU, National Nanyang Technological University. Even now also he is associated with NTU Singapore, and he came and he did a half-a-day workshop for our scholars as well as some of the outside participants. So he just shared a few points why most of the papers are getting rejected from AMJ, because there the acceptance rate is just 3% or less than 5%, not even 5%. Suppose if 100 papers are submitted, they accept only 5 or 3 papers, not more than that. So that is the submission rate as well as in relation with acceptance rate of that particular journal. This is the norm in most of the number 2 or number 3 or top 10 journals in particular domain or in any domain. So what he was saying is one of the major reasons why most of the papers are getting rejected is it's not so novel. The theoretical contribution is very weak. The theory application is very weak. The theorizing part is very weak. The hypothesis development part is very weak. And then it's a mere replication of some of the past studies that is available in the same domain of literature or some other literature. So if that is the case, there is a high chance that a high possibility that maybe after 1 or 2 rounds of revision, that particular paper may be rejected from that particular journal. So in AMJ, they take at least 2 to 3 years for publishing a paper, and by default, editor will screen the paper and then it will send it for peer review. In the first round of revision, they will also suggest a lot of major changes. The first revision is by default either rejection or major revision only. Hardly people get minor revision in the first round of review, especially from AMG sort of journals. Then in the second revision, again, they will send some more reviews. In the third revision, they may either reject, or even in the second revision also, either they may reject or they may accept the paper. So this is what the norm in most of the top 5 journals. So what I'm trying to say here is theoretical contribution is one of the important component that we need to pay a lot of attention. Rather, we pay a lot of attention to the data analysis part, and then the data related or maybe method related part. So that is a wrong myth that is existing in India. I just look at the chat because I got some notification. Yeah, no questions. So what I'm trying to say here is you need to pay a lot of attention to the theory development part or theoretical contribution part as well as the hypothesis development part. Otherwise, the chances of getting acceptance from those sort of top-tier journals are really difficult. So here in one of the papers, Summers 2001 paper, this paper is coming from Journal of Academy of Marketing Science. So James paper, Academy of Marketing Science. So you look at this paper, here you get to know about 17 types of contribution. Not only that, they also cited some of the reasons why papers are getting rejected. I just copy pasted all those points here. Just look at the first point, why most of the papers are, especially in the context of empirical studies, why papers are getting rejected. The research questions being investigated are not very interesting. For example, studies that are mainly descriptive and lack theoretical implications. Then the second point is the research, although well executed, does not appear to make a sufficiently large contribution to the literature. Example, the study largely replicates past research with minor modifications. And then the third point is the conceptual framework is not well developed. Example, lacks precise conceptual definitions of the constructs and are compelling theoretical rationale for the hypothesis and so on. And then the fourth point is the methodology is seriously flawed. The sample is inappropriate for the research question. The validity of one or more key measures is suspect. Under the experiment lack experimental realism and so on. Then the fifth point is the writing is so confused that an invitation to revise and resubmit is considered unlikely to result in an acceptable manuscript. These are the obvious reasons. The 5 obvious reasons why our papers are getting rejected, either in the this rejection stage, editor's stage, or first round of revision, or second round of revision, or third round of revision. It can be anything. Now, let me give you some overview about understanding each and every points. I'll go with the bottom from the bottom. Fifth point is writing is so confused. How do we solve this issue? As I mentioned earlier, you try to make use of some editorial services that is coming from the publishing house. For example, in elsewhere, Emerald, T&F, then Sage, everywhere they do Springer, and everywhere they do have some editorial services. They charge on the basis of the word count limit of your paper. In an average, they charge at least 20 to 30,000 per manuscript. If you're not able to afford that much of money, you try to look for some local services that is available in India where they charge some 4,000 or 5,000 rupees for editing a manuscript. Or you try to look for some collaborator who is coming from native English speaking country who will take care of all those things, so that you can also give them some credit as co-author and so on. Not only they will do the grammar checking and then technical, rewriting some of the paragraphs, they will also add more value to our manuscript in terms of they will also add more value to our research process. That is also possible. These are all the few ways how you can mitigate this particular issue. So even after the completion of your manuscript writing, even after the completion of your research process, this can be mitigated. This can be mitigated, and need not to worry much about writing related issues, writing related concerns. And then the fourth point is the methodology is seriously flawed. The methodology is seriously flawed. Sometimes this may not be rectified once the data collection is over. But before the data collection, if possible, you try to address some of the methodology related issues. A good suggestion, better way of addressing this issue is before you start doing any project, it's better to understand what is happening in the current literature in terms of methodological advancement or in terms of the kind of methods used to address those research questions. For example, you had a research question that should be addressed with the help of qualitative research. but you are using primary data method, that to cross-section survey. If there is a mismatch in terms of addressing that research question with the help of a cross-section survey, then this is one of the obvious reasons why papers are getting rejected. So it's a methodological issue. Don't think that methodological issue means the reported p-value is not good, or the reported tables are not good, and so on. Methodology includes even your research design related component also. So what I'm saying is, before the data collection, make sure that whatever may be the process you are going to do it in the near future, everything is really good. Everything is really good, so that you can get a paper out of your research process. Then the secondary aspect of looking at this methodology is seriously flawed point is, the sample is inappropriate for the research question. The validity of one or more key measures is suspect, under the experimental lacks experimental realism, and so on. For example, even now I could see some of the research works that is happening in some of the universities. I don't want to name the university name and all. They themselves create the items. That's fine, you do it, but you follow scale development process. Otherwise, at the end of the day, whatever may be the construct you want to capture it, you may not be able to capture it. There are thesis work I have seen. They say that I'm trying to measure the impact of job performance from the context of job satisfaction. But what they would have measured is only they would have measured job satisfaction. They would have not measured job performance, but still they write a thesis saying that I'm trying to look at performance from the perspective of job satisfaction and so on. These are all serious issues. You can't mitigate this issue once the study is conducted. And there are some issues which I have noticed. For example, I mean, they may be having a model, but most of the items were self-developed in nature, because they say that my supervisor has dictated all those items, so I just created the questionnaire and then went to the field for data collection and so on. Again, it's a serious problem, seriously reported problem. Then another set of issues are, they manipulate the data in the sense, without going to the field, instead of collecting the data from the field, they themselves fill the questionnaire and then they try to do the analysis, and they will also justify that, sir, I went to the field and I got only this much of information, so now I would like to do the analysis and so on. At the end of the day, if you look at the fit values and other things, you don't get the decent fit for the model and so on when you do CFER, SEM and so on. So what I'm saying is, again, this is also like a serious methodological issue. Those things we can't do anything, so we need to follow some ethics in terms of doing any sort of research work. Otherwise, there is a high possibility that your paper may be rejected. And these days, in most of the psychology journals, I'm not sure about other journals. In most of the psychology journals these days, they're asking us to submit the data along with our manuscript. So when you submit your data, suppose if somebody is interested to re-verify your data analysis section, they have the liberty to download your data from the permanent repository where it got uploaded, and then they will also question your paper. And I have seen recently, I have seen one of the paper got retracted from Journal of Finance Journal after the acceptance, even after the publication of online version. So those sort of practices will also happen. If something goes wrong with your paper and if it is retracted from the journal, that will badly affect your credibility. That will create a lot of bad image about your authorship as well as profile. Don't do that. So these are the few reasons why our papers are getting rejected. Point number 4 and 5 can be slightly rectified, but you can't rectify point number 1, 2, 3 once the study is being conducted or once the data collection is over, if it is an empirical study. So now I'll look at the point number 3. The conceptual framework is not well developed. Example, lacks precise conceptual definitions of the constructs and are compelling theoretical rationale for the hypothesis, which means that the model, whatever may be the kind of model we are trying to develop, the model is not well developed with the help of strong theory support, and whatever may be the hypothesis which you have proposed that lacks some justification, and then the theoretical rationale is completely missing. Construct definitions are not properly given in the theory development as well as hypothesis development section. So if that is the case, then there is a high chance that probability that your paper will be definitely rejected from the journal. This is also like another major reason why our papers are getting rejected. Look at the second point. This is in most of the cases, this is applicable to us. I also faced this particular issue before knowing that what is research contribution or theoretical contribution or novelty during my early stage of research work. The second point is the research, although well executed, does not appear to make a sufficiently large contribution to the literature, which means the study largely replicates past research with minor modifications. I'll give you some examples here. For example, understanding the relationship between job autonomy and organizational commitment is one of the widely researched hypotheses. I mean, at least with no time, you can find at least some 100 references where they have tested this particular relationship in different contexts. Let us imagine that in India, not much has been done with respect to linking job autonomy with organizational commitment. Let us assume that you are trying to do this research in Indian context. Now, what will happen is when you replicate this already validated hypothesis in Indian context, you may be coming up with your own justification saying that, sir, in my district, no study has been done. In my state, no study has been done. Overall, in India, also no study has been done in terms of linking this variable with this particular outcome and so on. But international journal editors, they will ask this question, so what? We know that it's a well-established relationship. Definitely, when they get more autonomy, that will determine, that will increase the commitment level of the people. So why do you want to replicate this hypothesis once again in your context? So if they ask this question, if you don't have proper justification, then there is a high chance that your paper may be rejected. And here, often in India, researchers used to say that, sir, in India, especially in this context, especially in this district, no research has been done. So what? Again, you have to ask this question, so what? So what exactly you are trying to contribute? So if you don't have solid answer for the so what question, then there is no point in doing that particular research. This is one of the most cited or obvious reason why papers are getting rejected from some of the top tier journals, because in most of the cases, we as the Indian researchers, this is applicable to even other cases also, most of the people are merely replicating some of the well-established hypotheses that got published in some of the top tier journals. When you are trying to replicate the same hypothesis once again in Indian context, and there is a high chance that definitely your paper will be rejected from the journal. So I think somebody has raised their hand. Any questions?
Yes, sir. I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, when it comes to secondary data, the thing is, research has been made from in 1967 and 1989 on some particular topics, and those variables are still repeating. And from 2010, there is a vast change in the variables. So we are going to do the same research, but it is going to be a longitudinal research. Is it going to have some implications on the?
No. No, that's fine, completely fine. If you are able to justify your research gap by including the context, that's fine. That's fine, absolutely fine. But if you are not able to, for example, let me bring this context, ma'am, COVID issue. Okay. We all of us know what happened during the COVID, right? You look at, you name any top tier journal, you name any constructor, you name any research domain. There are some replicated study evidences are available, published in the context of COVID, no?
Yes,
for example, I come from work family conflict domain, and remote working is one of the highly researched area since 2010 or 2005. You have a lot of evidences in top tier journal. Once again, people have started to re-examine this phenomenon in the context of COVID. There, the COVID-19 context is bringing the value addition, basically.
Yes,
so because COVID-19 is completely different from our normal scenario, no?
Yes, sir.
So if you have this sort of context specific research question or research problem, then there is a possibility that your paper may be accepted. Otherwise, it's really difficult to convince the reviewer as well as editor to accept your manuscript.
Okay, sir. I have another doubt.
Yeah.
For example, usually we are, as I'm a research scholar first of all, so we are being instructed to produce more research papers based on our thesis topic.
Yeah.
Here, what happens is now I'm collecting secondary data. So the
Yeah.
thing is, when the variables and all, when I do research, when I publish a paper, I had published a paper. Now,
Yeah.
for 1 year, I have published a paper with 1 year data. Now, when
Yeah.
I'm doing this is with 10 years data, even
Mm.
then I get for few variables, they are coinciding. I get the same result. At that
Mm.
time, in reference section, am I allowed to use my own paper reference in the thesis?
Ma'am, can you elaborate your question, ma'am,
The
once
thing
again?
is like,
Same variables you are using in 10-year context. You
y-
have published something with the help of 1 year data, but
mhm.
when you use 10 years data, same variable is getting repeated, correct?
Yes, sir. In a few cases,
Okay.
especially the results are also coinciding. I'm getting for 1 year what result I got for 10 years
Same result
also.
only you are
I'm
getting
getting
it
the
for the
same
10
result.
years.
So how does this work, and how would I add the reference, sir, here?
That's fine. You can cite your paper to say that this I found it with the help of my 1 year data.
Hmm.
Now, even when I collected the 10 years data, there also I'm getting the same results. I
Hmm.
think you can cite your paper also, provided the reviewer and editors are quite convinced with your research findings. There is
Okay, sir.
no, I mean, nothing is wrong here, ma'am. I can't find any issue based on my limited understanding and secondary data research. But for
Mhm.
more details, better you get in touch with some of the hardcore secondary data researchers. I hope you are coming from economics domain, right?
No, sir.
Or
Commerce.
econometric, commerce. So
Com.
better you get some expert opinion from commerce related people. But
Okay.
based on my limited understanding, I don't see any problem here now.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yeah, Khadija
Hello, sir.
Farhana. Yeah.
Sir, myself
Yes, ma'am.
Farhana. My question is publishing a conceptual study is good or not?
Good question. But again, we can have another 1 hour session to understand what is conceptual paper. Quickly, I'll refer few journal names. You go back and check the at least 1 or 2 papers, recently published papers, and then you will get to know what is real conceptual paper now. Human Resource Management Review, Academy of Management Review. You go through some of the papers published in these 2 journals, especially in Academy of Management Review. They propose some model along with the propositions. Usually the conceptual papers, I mean the theory development, hardcore theory development papers are written by the professor level people when they get solid understanding about that particular domain of literature. But often I see in India, even young researchers, I mean scholars also writing conceptual papers, but I don't think so you can sell that particular work in really so-called top tier journals, man. Maybe to start with some simple Scopus indexed or maybe UGC Care listed journals, you can publish that paper. But I don't think so you will be able to publish that particular paper in really top tier journals, man. Before that, please have some solid understanding about what is conceptual paper. Mainly 2 things should be there in conceptual paper. One is theory which has to be developed along with the proper propositions. If those those 2 components are missing, means I don't think so you can publish your paper in really top rates. Please
Thank you,
go
sir.
through AMR papers.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Shall I proceed further? Okay, so here in the second point, what I'm saying is, when you are trying to replicate the past studies with a minor modification or adding here and there 1 or 2 variables, or bringing some context-specific issues, or collecting data, something like that. I mean, when you are trying to justify your research work based on this particular logic, again, I don't think so. Your paper may be published in a top 10 journals. This is again another reported problem in terms of getting the rejection, as well as in terms of why our papers also rejected after first round of revision or maybe second round of revision and so on. And then the first point is the research questions being investigated are not very interesting. So you should pay a lot of attention to the research problem rather than paying rather than paying a lot of attention to the other components like methodology part, data part, and then writing part. Of course, writing is important, methodology is important, data analysis is important, results also important. But you more than that, you need to pay a lot of attention to the research question or research problem. If your research problem is so good, if your research idea is so good, and if your research questions are so good, definitely there is a high possibility that you will be able to get better publication. Otherwise, I mean, it's really difficult to get decent publication from the journal. Fine. Any questions? So I just want to play a small video here from one of the eminent scholar from marketing area, and you try to listen to him what exactly he is saying in terms of getting published in top marketing journals. But the concepts which he is going to discuss is applicable to even all other domain related scholars as well as faculty members also. Fine. Shall I play the video?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me whether you are able to hear the
I'm
voice?
Ajay Kohli. I'm
Yes, sir.
Professor
Yes,
of
sir.
Marketing at Georgia Tech.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ajay Kohli. I'm Professor of Marketing at Georgia Tech. So before I sort of talk about the 3 tips for publishing, I want to set the context. And the context is when we write a paper, we are writing to a set of reviewers. And it's important to understand the context of the reviewers, meaning reviewers are extremely knowledgeable people. They are very, very busy. They really have a lot of work piled up already. And so when our paper goes to reviewers, it's one more thing that they have to do. So what we have to keep in mind is someone who is in that frame of mind, what they're looking for is something that's direct. They're looking for something that is coherent, and they're looking for something that's easy to process. So keep those 3 things in mind. And when we keep those 3 things in mind, that generates ideas, 3 ideas for, or 3 tips for writing for publishing in top journals. The first tip would be boil down your key insight from the paper into 1 sentence. And that may seem very, very hard, but often it's not very hard. Often when we cannot do that, it's because we really don't know exactly what contribution we are making. So what we want to do is write down the major insight, the key insight from a paper in 1 sentence, possibly 2, but 1 sentence is ideal. And this may not work for all papers, but it probably works for 95% of the papers that we do. So tip number 1, write down your key contribution in 1 sentence, and then build a paper around that insight. The second thing I would suggest, and this relates to developing a coherent story, a paper is a very long document. It's, 30, 40 pages long. And what happens oftentimes is the paper gets written over different time periods, and one part of the paper doesn't work with the second, doesn't work with the third, and so that becomes a big problem. So one way to sort of deal with that, and this is tip number 2, one way to deal with that is to write an extended abstract. So like 2 pages, 2 single-space pages, all the way from the first sentence of the paper to the conclusion of the paper. Include the theory, include the methods, include the analysis, the findings, the whole enchilada in 2 single-spaced pages. And that's your extended abstract. The benefit of that is it will point to inconsistencies that may exist in the introduction as compared to the theory, as compared to the method, and so on. So you can easily spot any inconsistencies that might exist and sort of take care of them. So write a 2-page extended abstract and then elaborate on that abstract to develop the whole paper. So that's the second idea. And the third thing I would say is, as you write the paper, imagine that it's going to be read by 2 very different reviewers. And not that they are like this, but imagine there's a reviewer who's very finicky, very particular about precision and so on, and gets very irritated if you write something imprecise. So write the paper, keeping this review in mind, and that will force you to make every sentence accurate, every sentence really precise, and very, very, rigorous, be it theory, be it method, be it findings, be it implications. You'll be, imagine this reviewer who's really, really particular, nasty with regard to precision. And so write with to that reviewer. What happens though is when you write in that fashion, the paper becomes unwieldy. Your sentence structures become complicated. The flow of the thought goes haywire. The sentences don't lead into the next one. The paragraphs don't feed into the other one. So now imagine there's a second reviewer. And this reviewer, think of this reviewer as a lazy reviewer. He or she doesn't want to read a lot. Rather, he or she doesn't want to spend too much time reading your paper. So now the paper that you've written, revise it with this reviewer in mind. So what that will force you to do is, trim down your sentence length, trim down the sentence structure, put your references or citations at the end of the sentence rather than in the middle, and on and on and on. So you're writing to appeal to this lazy reviewer. So when you smoothen out the writing in this way, what happens is you lose some of the precision. So you go back, iterate one more time, and now imagine you're writing to that nasty reviewer, that really precise, precision-seeking reviewer, and revise that. And again, when you do that, the paper will become more rigorous, but then you lose the flow, you lose the ease of reading. So now you imagine the second reviewer all over again, and then you revise it so that you're writing to this, reader or reviewer who doesn't want to spend too much time understanding what's in there. You simplify the whole thing. And you keep repeating this process over and over again until such time that the paper is, number one, really rigorous, really precise, as well as really easy to read. And that is what you're really looking for. So if you can accomplish those three things, and if the research is good, it should get published. I'm Ajay Kohli. I'm professor of marketing at
So I hope you got some understanding by watching this particular video. So here I would like to re-emphasize one more point. The major issue once again, the issue or point is, the contribution. If you are not able to keep your contribution in a single statement, suppose if somebody is asking you to say something about your paper contribution, you should be in a position to narrate it in a single statement. If that is the case, that is how we need to project our core contribution in the introduction section of the manuscript. Usually, at the end of the introduction section of the paper, the authors used to project their study contribution. So unless the reviewers or editors find some value addition or maybe contribution in your manuscript, I don't think so they will accept your paper. So this is one of the obvious reason why we get rejections from the top rated journals. And same point was mentioned by Professor Ajay Kohli also during his presentation. So I do have 2 more videos. If time permits, we'll watch it. Otherwise, I'll share the link. Now we'll understand the different sources of research gaps and research questions. So here I would like to ask the participants to read these 2 references. Let me show you those references in terms of understanding the research gap approaches, the kind of approaches widely used by the people. You just go to my resources page. This is my personal website where I'm managing a sub-page called the resources page. So here, if you go here, you will be able to find a section called the research question. So here I kept 2 references. One is from Sandberg and Alverson 2011 paper, Ways of Constructing Research Questions, Gap Spotting or Problematization. You please start your reading from this paper first, and then you read this generating research questions through problematization. So what I'm trying to convey here is basically, usually people, they try to possess their research gap by saying that this is missing in the literature. This was not examined in the past literature, so I'm trying to fill this gap. This is how they're trying to do. Why do you want to fill that? So it doesn't mean that whatever may be the gaps that is existing in the literature, every gaps are warranting some study evidences. So there are some cases where people may not be interested to proceed with that particular area of research because nowhere that is relevant to the current societal changes, or maybe relevant to the current industry practices. So that could be one of the reason. And by saying that no research has been done with respect to this particular area, and if you are trying to do that, yes, it's a gap, but you can't sell your paper to top tier journals if that is the case. So what I'm saying is, you please read those two references, gap spotting versus problematization, and then another paper title is generating research questions through problematization. Both the references will give you solid understanding about understanding how do we generate our research questions basically. But here, if you look at this slide, I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. If you look at this slide, I just collated some 21 points on the basis of my research experience and on the basis of some of the evidences cited from the journal articles. So one by one, we'll try to discuss all of these points. To discuss this 21 points, we can have a day-long session. So that much of content is available, but we'll discuss one by one. There are some points where I may be devoting more time. There are some points where I may not be paying much attention. So first, to look at the first point. SDGs, that is Sustainable Development Goals, are social problems, or organization problems, or market-related problems, and etc. You look at the kind of problems that is existing in our current, in our society currently. So whether the problem is related to market or organization or related to what you call some social issues, it can be anything. You look for those sort of problems and you try to solve those problems with the help of your research work. If that is the case, clearly you can say that there is a motivation for my study, and nobody can question you on anything, why you have selected this thesis or why you have selected this topic and so on. Again, with respect to this particular point, I would like to suggest one more reference. There's a paper available in my resources page, topic selection. That is a paper title, one of the editorial comment borrowed from Academy of Management Journal. So they're discussing that there are some there were about 4 to 5 points were mentioned in the paper, and one of the point is doing some research in terms of solving some of the grand challenges. Those grand challenges are nothing but the sustainable development goals related issues or social problems only. So for example, I'm trying to do a research related to understanding gender pay gap. So how do you connect this research with one of the SDG? So there is a concept called gender equality. There's a SDG called gender equality. You try to connect this particular research problem with the gender equality SDG so that you are adding some value to the social problem. You are providing some solution to the social problem. Through this way also, you can very well identify the research gap. I'll share one more reference. For example, if you look at the Professor Abhijit Banerjee work, he looked at poverty from the lens of economics as well as education. So he has done, he has done a lot of research work in Indian context with the help of Pratham Foundation. They did a lot of RCTs, that is randomized control trials, in the context of education. And they have provided a lot of evidences saying that, yes, education will help the people to mitigate poverty issue and so on. So like that, you can do some research work in terms of understanding the issue or maybe solving the issue and so on. That is also very much possible. Then you look at some of the other related social problems. Now, energy crisis is one of the major issue. Suppose if the country is, if other borrowing country is going to stop the oil sales, means just imagine our condition. In every houses we are using gas stove. In every houses we do own either two-wheeler or four-wheeler, and the entire transportation is purely dependent on oil, that is petrol and diesel. So if something goes wrong with the oil and diesel, petrol and diesel, you just imagine our situation. I don't think so the entire country will collapse. So what I'm saying is we need to solve this sort of issues by with the help of some sound research work. I'm not saying that this sort of energy related research work can be done with the help of management scholars or commerce scholars. Wherever it is possible, yes, this can be done. That's the point I'm saying. So this is one of the greatest source of research problem. You please pay some attention to SDGs. I hope everyone might be having some idea about what is sustainable development goals, right? And then the second source is review papers published in top tier journals. For example, let me show you. There are some bunch of journals coming from annual reviews. Any idea about this annual reviews? Any idea about this annual reviews? So you look at the journals. You may be from psychology, you may be from management, you may be from commerce. Wherever you are coming from, you find at least one or two journals related to your discipline. See, I come from OB and HR area. Let me click this organizational psychology and organizational behavior. Look at the impact factor of the journal, 12 point something. And here in annual reviews database, they publishes only review related papers. They never publishes any other papers beyond the review articles. Let me go to the current volume and then I'll take one of the paper. I do have subscription, so I'm trying to open some of the recently published work. For example, if you look at this particular paper, the power of listening at work. So this is one of the phenomena. They might have proposed a model or theory. Then at the end of the paper, you will get on straightforward manner some of the research questions related to this particular phenomenon. Let me show you. You see, few issues. These are all the straightforward issues which they have highlighted. And when you do some research related to answering the issues which was mentioned here, that itself is your PhD work. This is one of the evidence. Let me show you another paper. And when you read, when you read this sort of papers, you will get top to bottom information about everything on that particular phenomenon. That is also possible. See, just look at research question 1. What emerges experiences facilitate recovery for boundaryless workers? Research question 2. How does the social context impact employee recovery? Research question 3. How do teams recover together? So, and then theme. Under the theme, again, research question 4. How does technology impact recovery? Research question 5. How can technology be leveraged to aid recovery? Then research question 6. How do new employment contracts affect the recovery of employees? Then how can recovery be supported for unskilled shift and precarious workers and so on? So what I'm saying is, when you read this sort of review articles, you get on straightforward manner some research question which can be done or which can be dealt at the level of PhD. So you take one of the research question, that itself you can complete your PhD. In turn, you can warrant better publication. That is very much possible. So this is one of the effective source where you can get better research problem. Yeah, Venkatesh or Professor Venkatesh, or any questions? Professor Venkatesh, or I think you have raised your hand. Any questions? Yeah, yes, Venkatesh, or and Suchitra. Any questions? Okay, now let me move on to the next point. I hope you got the logic right, what I'm saying here. Review papers published in top journals, right? And then the third source where you get better research gap is theory papers. There are some hardcore theory papers published in the journal. Again, the same example, I can quote it here, annual review journals. Now, let me show you something. You go to Academy of Management Review Journal. You go to Academy of Management Review. Here they publishes only theory related papers. They publishes only theory related papers, and whatever may be the, I mean, whatever may be the theory which they have proposed, definitely that will come along with some propositions. When you read those propositions, again, each and every proposition can go as one of the PhD dissertation. That is possible. So for more details, you look at some of the papers coming from Academy of Management Review. So these are all hardcore theory papers, basically. Hardcore theory papers. I think in one of the recent issue, there is a editorial comment available. Why I reject your paper, common pitfalls in writing theory papers and how to avoid them. So for more details, you just visit this page. I mean, visit this page for downloading some of the papers. I'm not sure whether you have the access to download it. Even I do not have the access to download any of the papers here. Otherwise, I would have opened and then shown something. But I do have access to one of the old paper published in the same journal. Let me show you. So this paper is coming from the same journal, Academy of Management Review only. So it's a theory paper on work family enrichment theory. Now look at the model which was proposed and then the kind of propositions available in this paper. So each and every propositions are warranting some research, basically. Of course, it's an old paper. By this time, most of the people would have fulfilled some of the research gaps or maybe questions proposed in this paper. But you look for some other recently published papers. There you get really cutting edge research problems. This is one of the major sources where you can get research gaps or research problems in a straightforward manner. See, there are propositions. This is one of the propositions. So you read all those propositions and then you try to understand this theory. Then you try to do some empirical research work in terms of adding some empirical evidence to this particular theory paper. So through this way also, you can complete your research work. That is possible. Then the next source is meta-analysis papers. Any idea about meta-analysis papers?
Collection of literatures.
Sorry?
Collection of literatures based on the review.
Kind of a literature review only, systematic review only. Let me show you something. See, I come from this work family balance area. There are some meta-analysis papers keep on getting published in top 10 journals. This meta paper is coming from Journal of Applied Psychology. And in every meta-analysis paper, you get a lot of research direction, future direction. So for example, I'm just using future term here, I mean keyword. See, an agenda for future research. You carefully go through this agenda for future research paragraph. Each and every paragraph, at least you'll be able to get 2 or 3 research questions. That is possible. So simply by citing that meta paper, in this meta paper, people have warranted the study. So I'm trying to do this study in the current scenario. Something like that you can, justify your research problem or research gap. That is very much possible. So this is again another way how easily you can identify the research gap or research problem. Then the next one is scope for future research section in the empirical papers. You read any empirical research papers, at the end of the research paper, there will be a section called limitations and scope for future research. It's not that in every paper they will provide really good research gap for future research. You look at top 1, top 2, top 3 sort of journals. Definitely, whatever maybe the gaps they are persisting over there, or maybe proposing under the section called limitation and future direction section. Those gaps are sound gaps, and you can do a research, further research in terms of tackling all those research problems. That is very much possible. So that is again another easiest source where you get research gaps or research problems. And then the next one is bibliometric analysis papers. Bibliometric analysis papers are, I think, in the recent past, especially in the recent past, a lot of papers are getting published in the literature related to bibliometric analysis. So again, with the help of bibliometric analysis papers, also you can identify some of the research gap. Even to identify research gap, one can start with doing a bibliometric analysis also. That will generate some themes that will give you some fair understanding about what has happened in the past with respect to this particular domain of literature. Everything you will come to know. Top tier journals. For example, let me go to AMJ. For example, you go to this Academy of Management journal. Now you look at any of the current issue. In every issue, they will come up with the editorial comment basically. See, from the editors, that's important, interesting, and generative. Winners of the AMG 2021 Best Paper Award and 2020 Research Impact Award. This is a kind of general article only. Now we'll look at some of the other issues. See, from the editors, joining societal conversations on management and organization. You read this paper, they will give you ample amount of research problems or research gaps in this sort of editorial comments. This is again another good source of research gap where you can easily identify without spending much time. Look at the editor comment in this journal, in this issue. Insights on how we try to show empathy, respect, and inclusion in AMJ. Like that, there are more editorial. Of course, this comment is something general in nature, generic in nature. So like that, you look at some of the editorial comments from especially top 5 journals, you will get really good insights about your future research problem. Then the next source is call for special issues. There are some special issues available in most of the top tier journals, and the editors used to write some 2 to 3 pages of content related to call for special issue. So I'm warranting future research related to this particular area and so on. So something like that, they propose some major theme or maybe major area of research where you can also do some research work. So that is again another way how you can get the solid research problem or maybe research gap for your future research. Then the next source is unidentified mediators and moderators. In the context of management or social science research, there are cases where there are some partial mediation models might be sitting in the literature. There you can include, you can identify some of the mediators, and then you can include it in the existing model. Through that way also you can advance the literature. That is possible. And then the next source is integrating theories. This is a bit complex in nature, but this is also like another way how you can also work on some interesting research areas or maybe research problems by borrowing some theory from some other domain and then integrating that particular theory with your current domain of literature. That is also possible. A lot of examples are available in the literature related to integrating theories, as well as borrowing theories from other domain or other discipline and so on. Let me show you some example for both from one of the AMR paper. Just a minute. Just look at this paper abstract. This is coming from Academy of Management Review. Just read the first 2 lines here. Here the author has brought this particular construct from some other literature and then applied in the domain of management. Just look at the first few lines. Jealousy has long been a topic of study in the relational psychology literature, while remaining underexplored in the field of management, despite its potential for widespread consequences within the workplace. You would understand. So this construct is available in some other domain. Now they are trying to bring this particular construct and then they are trying to applying it in the domain of management. And then relying on regulatory focus theory, we develop a tripartite model of jealousy based on the relationship between and the characteristics of the parties, actor, target, and then the rival, and so on. So what I'm saying is this is again another way how you can do some interesting research work that is also possible. Then scale development and revalidation. Let me show you one of my recently published paper. So the contribution is not that great, but it was done in the context of COVID. So here what we have done was, there was a scale proposed in the COVID context on fear of COVID-19. That was the scale actually proposed and got published in the same journal. Then after that, I could see some trend that is happening in this journal, especially in this journal, where most of the people have took this particular scale and then revalidated in their country context. So there are scales available in Japanese language, there are scales available in Persian language, something like that. In every country, the people have started to look at this particular construct from their own context and then their own perspective. Then I thought that, okay, why can't we do something in India? So during the peak COVID time, I mean, we were sitting at home only. So I did this research and finally I could able to sell this paper in the same journal. Of course, here the contribution which we have proposed was something different. But one of the reviewer of this paper is the person one was developed the scale itself. And we have highlighted some of the issues with respect to his proposal on the final version of the scale, but he did not agree to the proposal. So finally, we just want to get this publication. So we just convince the reviewer whatever he has asked us to do. I mean, asked us to do with respect to this paper, we did it, and then we got the acceptance finally. It's a, I mean, 11 point something impact vector journal. So what I'm saying is some sort of revalidation studies, some kind of scale validation studies, even those sort of studies will also have more impact. In turn, that will, I mean, you can get better journal publication. That is also possible. The next one is recent trends context. For example, now Ukraine war is one of the recent context actually, not trend basically. For example, 5G is again another trend. Then especially if you look at the newspaper, every day at least I could see some news related to car sales volume and so on. And the people also saying that the car sales for the last, I mean, September month is more than the pre-COVID time. I mean, more than the pre-COVID era time sales and so on. So why it is happening? What changed the people mindset in terms of buying a car and so on? Suppose when you want to look at this sort of recent trends that is happening with respect to any domain of literature, you can do some research. For example, in the context of HR, moonlighting is one of the recently, heard phenomenon. So how do we solve this issue? Or whether we could give the liberty to the people to select their own jobs, or if that is the case, how do we quantify the nature of work that is being done through by our own employees and so on? How do we monitor them? So this sort of things also you can look at by looking at the recent trends or context that is happening in the current era. That is also possible. That will also give you a lot of research questions. And then research reports published by the consulting firms or corporate reports. See, look at some of the reports published by Cognizant or Wipro or BCG or some of the marketing agencies. They will say that, okay, this is a trend that is happening in the near future. We are going to witness some major changes related to this particular aspect or that particular aspect. Something like that, you will be able to get a lot of, information about all those things. So even with the help of that, even with the help of those sort of reports also, you would be able to get, good research problem. That is also possible. Then look at some of the recently created initiatives, government initiatives, or change in government policies and so on. Even that will also give you some direction for your future research. For example, this digital initiative is one of the major initiative done through by our government. So what sort of changes it is bringing to the industry, to the end user, or to the end consumer and so on. So even those sort of things also you can look at. Then your own observation and trying to understand something new. For example, you look at some of the, you make some of your own observation related to market or related to industry or related to organization, and then you try to understand something more about why that is happening and what could be the possible reason why that particular those sort of incidents are happening. You can also understand. For example, in the recent media, most of the school children are not behaving properly. Even they are trying to beat their own school teachers also. But during our time, we paid a lot of respect to our teachers and we treat them like a god, basically. So that is the kind of respect we used to do, give it to our own school teachers. But now the trend has been changed completely, and we can understand this phenomenon. There could be some research evidences also why this trend is existing, why people are not respecting their own family members, or why kids are not respecting their own teachers. Why? Even there are cases I have witnessed something in rural context. The kids are not feeding their father or mother also. Even those sort of issues also happening. So why that is happening, especially in the recent past? That is not the scenario when we had our, grandparents and so on. So, but now the importance towards the family is slightly getting changed. The people have started to give more attention and more weightage to their family, and then income, and then other related their social belongingness and so on. So why this trend is happening? This is my observation. So you can also have similar kind of observations related to something, and then you try to work on that particular issue or that particular trend. That is also possible. The newspaper editorials. Please have a habit of reading newspaper editorials. I don't want to quote or cite any of the newspaper here. For example, today morning I read a editorial on something related to agriculture that was published in Business Line newspaper. So the issue which was highlighted by one of the ICSSR fellow was, so for example, we used to lease our land to our tenants, right? So this phenomenon is referred as tenant leasing. Whatever may be the insurance facility that is given by the government, or whatever may be the subsidies given by the government, actually that is not going to the person one who is doing the farming activity in our land, but that is coming to the owner of the land, basically. But in Odisha, it seems that they have implemented some scheme. I forgot the scheme name, Kalia or something. So they have implemented some scheme. It seems that they are trying to integrate the person, the tenant leaser, with the government subsidy scheme, so that the person one who is doing the farming activity, he will also get some benefit out of the government initiatives and so on. So how do we look at this problem? Maybe in the context of Tamil Nadu, or in the context of the crop insurance that is being introduced by our central government maybe 2 to 3 years back. So these are some of the burning issues, right? So how do we tackle this particular issue? Then another editorial I read it today morning. That editorial is about the new bill which is going to be submitted on telecom data protection. So again, I'm not sure about the entire details of that particular bill. They're just trying to highlight only one thing. That is, they're trying to give the liberty to the end user. Let them take their own call whether they want to share their data with the telecom operator or not. So again, it's a completely different story. So what I'm trying to say here is, you read this sort of editorials, there also you get a lot of burning issues that is happening in our country, and then you can also convert those issues in the form of researchable ideas or research questions and so on. That is also possible. Then 18th point is business headlines. You read some of the business headlines, because for most of the industry related problems, business headlines are, business headlines will help you to understand something more, and then you can work on those sort of issues. That is also possible. Then COVID-19 is a bit outdated, but still people also publishing their papers in the context of COVID-19. Then HBR and Sloan Management Review papers, they publish some practice-oriented conceptual papers, practice-oriented or industry experience-oriented papers. There also the people might be proposing some sort of new phenomenon related to industry. So from there also you get some clue in terms of doing some research. That is also possible. For more details, you read, try to have a habit of reading some of the magazines, even magazines like Forbes and so on. Then read some of the journals, not conceptual journals, practice-oriented journals like HBR, Sloan Management Review and so on. Easy to read only, so you can read those sort of things. And then you do wisely try to use Scopus and Web of Science databases to identify the research gap or to narrow down your research gap. So these are the few areas or few ways how you can also identify the research gap. So whatever I felt, whatever I thought that, okay, this could be some of the ways how effectively people can identify the research gap. So I just collated all those points in this slide. Now, yeah, any questions? I think somebody has raised their hand. Rajalakshmi.
Yes, sir. So,
Yes, ma'am, please, ma'am.
so this is regarding bibliometric analysis.
Yeah.
So for bibliometric analysis, do we require Scopus database?
No, either you can use Scopus data or Web of Science data, ma'am. Anything is fine. Both will do the job.
Okay, so Web of Science, whether it is, I mean, unless until the institute subscribes, can we get,
So you look for collaborator from some institute who can provide that particular data.
Okay, fine.
It's a matter of 5 minutes job only. If you are fine with the, I mean, if you are frozen the keywords, I mean, it's a matter of 5 minutes job to download that particular data from either Scopus or Web of Science. But I suggest you to go ahead with the Scopus because there are issues with Web of Science. Problem with the Web of Science is you don't get many numbers basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So now I'll give you a few tips for writing the research papers. Again, some of the points may be repeated here based on our previous discussion. So selection of the topic, whenever you choose your thesis topic or whenever, and before I start this, I just want to play this video. Just listen to this video once. So this professor is coming from one of the US university and she is trying to say something more about again publishing only. So 3 tips for getting published in a leading journal. Just listen to.
Hi, I'm Michelle Andrews. I'm an assistant professor of marketing at Emory University. I would say the first tip is to work on something that's relevant and timely. And there's several reasons for that. For one, hopefully it's going to be more interesting for you. And so you're going to enjoy, working on that and researching it. I would say another thing is you have 2 different audiences who are going to read what you produce. Other academics, and then hopefully practitioners. They're probably going to be more interested if it's relevant and timely. And then the third reason is you're going to have people who are reviewing what you're producing. And again, if it's relevant and timely, they're probably going to be more interested in it and be more willing to provide good feedback, etc. So I would say the first thing is really trying to work on something that, people use the term cutting edge, something that is really going to help move the field, move the needle for marketing, because everyone's going to be more interested in it. I would say the second tip that I have is remember to speak to the literature. We're all, I'm going to quote Google here, standing on the shoulders of giants. People before us have done something, even if, when I talk about cutting edge, etc., they've done something that's going to help shape your work. So definitely giving credit to those who came before you and also speaking to it to kind of bring people up to speed, saying this is what we know and this is what we want to know. I would also say the third tip is really try to get feedback on your work throughout the entire process. In the early stages, as you're starting to shape it, and then even when it's under review, a lot of times we think, oh, reviewers don't understand what I'm doing, etc. But a lot of times they're really providing good feedback, and it can help you speak more clearly to what you're trying to do. So those are my 3 tips to emerging marketing scholars.
This particular video in terms of understanding, especially I would like to quote only one thing here, that is practically relevant. So that's the point I would like to cite here. So see, if you're not doing something that is cutting edge and not relevant to the current society or maybe current issues related to the organization, then why do you want to do that research? If you are trying to do something for the sake of publishing, that's fine. But beyond that, you need to think about what sort of value addition you are trying it to the, you are trying to give it to the society or maybe to the organization. From that particular point of view, you need to think something more about your research. So that is one of the point I would like to highlight here. Yeah, general tips for writing the research papers. First, selection of the topic. So what? You ask this question many times. Unless you convinced with your own argument, you don't stop asking this particular question. So what? So what? For everything you try to ask this so what question. This will give you a lot of clarity in terms of understanding your own research problem, your own domain related thing in a much broader manner. I also see a lot of research work that is published in, thesis works published in some of the low-tier institutions. They say that a comparative study on, 5 private banks and then 5 public banks and so on. So what? We know that there is a difference. Private banks are doing better job than the government job. We know that. Then what else you are trying to do? Identifying that. So better performance is one part of the story. You try to provide solution. So what sort of solution you are providing? So even most of the government sector bank top level executives, they know the solution actually. Implementation is the issue. Are you providing any solution to the, those sort of banks in terms of implementing some robust solutions in order to mitigate all those issues? So, you need to, I just cited only this hypothetically. I may be right or wrong also. So what I'm saying is you try to ask yourself the so what question, and that will determine your, research problem in a better manner. And then the second point is contribution. The contribution of your research should be really, good. Otherwise, you can aim for better paper, better publication. So your contribution could be incremental or radical. So incremental means adding some value to the existing body of literature and then seeking for some publication. Radical means completely changing the conversation that is happening in the literature. For more details, when you want to make some radical sort of contribution, when you want to make this sort of advancement to the existing body of literature, please pay attention to generating research questions through problematization paper. You will get a lot of clarity what I'm trying to convey here. And then the third, tip is try to focus on theory, and whether you do empirical research or qualitative research, it can be anything. So there should be a theory support. It's a kind of norm these days. And there are some argument that is also going in the literature where without theory support also one can come up with the model and then they can also test their hypothesis and so on. It's a different sort of issue. So theory support and theoretical framework, it should be neatly crafted in your manuscript, in your research work. Otherwise, I don't think so you can aim for better publication. Then appropriate research design, selection of the appropriate research design. For example, I have seen many people have used survey research as one of the prominent research approach or research design to answer any sort of problem. That is not the case. There are some problems which requires some kind of grounded theory approach or maybe qualitative research approach or even secondary data research approach. But on the top of it, they look at everything from the survey research only. Don't do that. Since survey research we know and we are very much comfortable with survey research, you should not look at almost all of the problems from this particular lens alone. That is not the correct approach. And then robust methods. Method section should be neatly crafted and there should be rigor in the methods also. Then theoretical, practical, policy implications. There should be some theoretical implication, theoretical advancement, and then practical utility that should be there. And that will also provide some policy suggestions if you are doing some economics related research work. So you have to provide some policy suggestions to the policy makers. Otherwise, there is no value in your research in terms of the research contribution is concerned. And then writing style guide, please refer some of the style guides like AP 7th edition or 6th edition and so on. Most of the organization related journals, they follow this style guide basically. Then choosing the correct journal, selecting the right journal is a kind of art actually, but it can be done easily. These days, a lot of tools are available. One of the simplest solution how you can also select the correct journal is you look at the cited references of your own paper. That will also give you some clue about, okay, these are the journals where my domain related research work has been published in the past. So among those set of journals, I can look for any 1 or 2 journals where I can also submit my manuscript. That is one of the clue. You can get it at the time of submission. At the time of doing the literature review, you will get to know that, okay, these are the journals where keep on they're publishing my domain related journals. So there's a possibility that I can also submit my paper to those sort of journal. Whether they accept or reject, it's a different story, but you can give it a try. So that is again another clue. These days, in most of the publishing houses, they do have some services called Journal Finder. You just copy paste your title of the paper and then title of the abstract of your manuscript in the page, and then you click search. Then the kind of journals that is available in their publishing house, all those list of journals will be visible to you. From based on that particular searching process, also you can select the correct journal. So these are the few these are the few ways or methods how you can select the appropriate journal. Now let me show you something. Journal Finder. And Elsevier. So for example, if you go to this Elsevier platform, here what you need to do is you have to copy paste your paper title and then copy paste your paper abstract, and then you provide the keywords, then field of research, and then you find journals. You will be able to get set of suggestions here. That is again another easiest way how you can also select the appropriate journal for your paper submission. Then next one is grammar and flow. Already we spoke many things about this. And then adhering to the journal standards. This also in the beginning of the session, we had some conversation. So now let me move on to this video. I just want to play another one video. This is the last video, in fact.
I'm Rebecca Sodegraff, Conrad Previs Professor of Marketing at Kelley School of Business, Indiana University. My number one tip would be to really focus on the contribution. When you think about your research, you want to really think about the impact you should have. So I would strongly recommend that young scholars focus on who they want to influence and how they can make a difference with their research. So how can they change the thinking and the actions of scholars and marketing practitioners? And I think one of the best ways to consider how you can make a big impact is to think about how different theories might conflict and how theory might conflict with practice, and to look for ways in which you can start to uncover some really interesting new insights. And so obviously the contribution, I think, is probably the number one. The second would be rigor. Rigor is obviously, again, another really important one, and rigor in the theory, the foundation, and the method and analysis. And so all of those are going to really support whether or not your contribution can have this impact. And so that's needed. And then the third one would be to focus on the details. And when you focus on the details, you want to focus on the constructs and think about clearly defining your constructs right up front and keeping interpretation of those constructs clear throughout the manuscript, and make sure that those are consistent throughout the manuscript. Another element of that detail is also grammar, because if you don't have the clear grammar throughout, then a lot of your ideas are not clearly communicated, and that can then cloud interpretation of your research. And so I would recommend those three things to help elevate your chances of getting your research published in a leading journal, in a leading marketing journal. And I'm Rebecca Sodegraff from Indiana University.
So I hope you got some understanding based on this video, right? Again, she is also trying to mention the same thing, like contribution must be really significant. Otherwise, even you can't target 0.1 impact factors. That's the truth, actually. I also faced this issue without much contribution. I also tried to submit my paper to some of the SSC journals. Then at the end of the day, I got a lot of rejections actually. Vishnunath, sir, can you briefly explain SLR writing style in a journal publication like thematic or methodological? Same. With respect to SLR, there are different types of SLRs are available. Meta-analysis is a kind of SLR technique only. Now, in the recent past, people also using bibliometric analysis and so on. But the synthesis part is a core component in any SLR paper. So methodological SLR you can do, conceptual SLR you can do. With after the completion of SLR, you can also come up with the theory and then along with the proposition. I suggest that that is like a, dominant approach in the top tier journals. But when you do some methodological review or this is what the past status of this particular construct that is published in the past, which is something that when you are providing some summary sort of information, nobody will appreciate your paper. For more details, you go to my resources page. There I have kept a literature review as a separate heading. Under that, I have given some methodological articles on understanding literature review process. Kindly go through them. Probably you may get some understanding. Then Umarul, sir, can you explain difference between Web of Science and Scopus, which is topmost? Web of Science is topmost. Fine. Now we'll move on to the next part. So what is the structure of a journal paper? I do whole day session on understanding this technical content of a journal paper structure, journal paper content, but I don't think so here we have enough time to discuss this. But briefly, I'll give you some idea or overview about understanding all those points. So how do we you take any empirical research paper coming from your domain of literature, and that will have this headings: title, abstract, keywords, introduction, theoretical background and hypothesis development, methods, measures, data analysis, results, discussion, practical implications, limitations, and scope for future research, conclusion, references, and appendix, and so on. These are the few things you will be able to see in any of the empirical research papers. So how do we craft the title? So let me tell you. So title can be crafted by keeping the key constructs and then the key relationships and then the population element if it is secured or if the study is context specific. These are the three elements you should keep it in your title. I do see titles in Indian context. They say that a study on job satisfaction with special references to IT sector employees in Hyderabad city and so on. This is how they propose their title. No, it's vague title basically. Why do you want to keep a word a study on? I know that it's a study only, it's a research evidence only. Then again and again, why do you want to reiterate by saying that a study on? I don't know who has invented this concept called a study on, but even now the people are following. Even now the thesis advisors are giving recommendation to keep a study on and so on. So what I'm saying is, first of all, whatever may be the study you are doing, it's a study only. We know that. So why do you want to reiterate yourself by stating that a study on job satisfaction and so on? So what, for example, if I say that a movie on Bahubali, will you like the title? We know that Bahubali is a movie. By seeing the teaser itself, one can understand it's a movie. Then why do you want to say that a movie on Bahubali or a movie on Ponniyin Selvan? So those things are all not required, right? So same logic only here also I'm proposing. But whereas in some of the economics related journals, I do see an empirical evaluation of an empirical assessment of something that they use. Probably that could be their context, or maybe that could be their sole idea, or maybe gap. That is fine. And again, using with the special reference to those things also you can avoid it. See, the reason why I'm asking you to avoid with special reference to is, since you are planning to submit your paper to your top tier journal, and it's a globally recognized journal or globally renowned journal, and they are trying to look for answering some of the research problems that is happening at the global level. Even if you're doing something locally, you try to generalize. You try to generalize that finding to the entire global population. That is one way how you can also, publish your paper in a top-tier journal. Let me show you one of the locally pressing issue, but it got published in one of the top-tier economics journal. Just look at this paper title. Interesting. Curse of the Mummiji, the influence of mothers-in-law and women in India. So this paper is talking about, actually they have collected the entire data from Uttar Pradesh state. It's a field investigation study only. So this paper is talking about, suppose this is mainly applicable for female, women's. Suppose if they have mother-in-law presence at their home, their social networking and then their career prospect or maybe career growth is suffered. So that's the finding they are trying to convey here. We know that this is happening in India. The way in which how they have portrayed this particular problem, and then the way in which how they have done this research work, that is really good, really good. For more details, just look at this paper. Fine. See, if we would have done this study, we would have said influence of study on influence of mothers-in-law with special reference to Uttar Pradesh state woman in India, something like that. But just look at the title. Able to understand? Data is coming from Uttar Pradesh only, but they have generalized to the entire population of India. That's the reason why they are keeping women in India. Clear? Then the next one is abstract. What should be there in the abstract? So writing this abstract is highly mechanical in nature, mechanical job only. It's not too tedious. Easily you can do it. Once you are done with the entire manuscript preparation, you can start writing the abstract. So in the abstract, you say something about your problem or relationship or gap, and then you say something about how you have collected the data, the methodology and results part. Then you say something about the implications and so on. So this should be the major content of your abstract. Then keywords. Keywords, you can pick it from your construct names. And in one of the editorial editor talk, he was saying that it's something interesting to me. And the first time I also got that clarity. Whatever may be the keywords or construct names that is there in your title and abstract, you try to provide some other keywords that is not mentioned in the title as well as abstract, so that your paper may be attracted by more people when they do the database-wise search. In turn, it will also increase your citation count. So here also I'm proposing the same thing. And logically, that is good only. So whatever may be the keywords that is not mentioned, the focal construct or maybe the study context that is not mentioned in the title or abstract, you try to project that in your keyword. That's how you can create the keyword. 4 or 5 keywords are sufficient. And then introduction. What should be there in the introduction? First, you need to write something about the literature, where you are working, what has happened in the past. Then you try to highlight the research gap. Then you try to highlight the controversies or inconsistent findings that is available in the past literature. Then you try to say that what exactly you are trying to do. Then you, if possible, you can talk about the theory which is supporting your relationships or maybe model and so on. Then you talk about the contribution of your study. So this should be the content of your entire introduction section. For more details, you please refer that Summers paper. There they have given a lot of details about how to craft abstract, title, introduction, theory development section, and so on. Then the next section is theoretical background and hypothesis development section. Often this section is misunderstood by the Indian scholars. They think that this is nothing but literature review section. No, actually your entire literature review part is over in the introduction first 2 lines itself. Now whatever you are going to say, whatever you are going to give here, that is nothing but your theoretical background and theory development as well as hypothesis development section. So for more details, you pick any one of the standard empirical paper that is coming from the top-tier journal. Probably you'll be able to get some more understanding about this part. Then methods, measures, data analysis, results. Simply you just follow the journal template. Whatever you pick 1 or 2 papers from the same journal where you are going to submit the paper, and then you look at the way in which how they have tested their hypothesis, the way in which how they have presented their results, you follow the same logic. It's easy, really easy. And then the discussion section. According to me, writing this discussion section and then the theoretical background section is the most, difficult section in any of the, writing process. In discussion section, what you have to do is you need to connect whatever maybe the hypothesis you have tested with the past literature as well as the theory which you have used in your research work. And here the the major issue is the bridge between your findings with the large body of literature. Also, you need to practically implicate what does it mean. Suppose job autonomy is positively influencing organizational commitment means, what does it mean? You have to provide the practical meaning for those sort of research relationship which you have explored in your research work. So for more details, there is an editorial comment coming from AMJ that is also cited in my first section of the resources page in my personal web page. You go there, there is a heading available discussing the result something. So you go through the editorial comment, you will get more clarity what should be there in the discussion section of the manuscript. On the top of it, you pick 2 or 3 references from the standard journal and then you read multiple times until you get the clarity what is there inside in the discussion section. That will also give you more clarity in terms of understanding this particular section of the manuscript. Then practical implications. Definitely you have to write the practical implication. This should be based on your research findings. Don't come up with your own practical implications or your own points under the practical implication. Then the next one is limitation and scope for future research. Whatever may be the limitations of the study, genuinely you try to disclose it. And at the same time, you try to convert those limitations in the form of a scope for future research. The limitation could be on methodology, the limitation could be on your relationship or maybe theory testing. It can be anything that is possible. And then you write few lines about the conclusion, then references, you follow the style guide for crafting your references, and then appendix, if any, like syntax and other things. So last slide of my presentation. What is the article publishing process? This diagram also I just created based on my experience only. First complete your research work and then prepare the paper outline. Then you complete the manuscript preparation process. So this paper outline is nothing but creating some extended abstract sort of version, and then you try to expand your paper further. That is what third point. Then 4, see the author guidelines of the targeted journal, because that will give you a lot of clarity in terms of understanding the way in which how you need to present your paper to the journal, targeted journal. And then submit the manuscript to the targeted journal. Then initial checks, you may get disk rejection, or during the disk rejection stage, they will also do the plagiarism checking. Even that could be one of the reasons why your paper may be getting rejected at this stage. Already we had an elaborate discussion about this particular part. Then point number 7 is first round of review. It can be minor, major, or rejection, or accept. It can be anything. But usually we never get acceptance revision in the first round itself. Usually it goes for at least a second round. In some of the top tier journals, it goes for even third round, fourth round, fifth round, and so on. That is also possible. Then in the second round, usually it would be like minor or major, again rejection or acceptance. It doesn't mean that since your paper was crossed first round of revision, you can expect acceptance from the second round. That is depending upon the kind of reviews which you have received in the first round of review comments. And then after that, if you get acceptance, you will get online version immediately, maybe within a week time or 10 days or 15 days, depending upon the publishing house where you have submitted and published your paper. Then finally, it will be listed in the regular issue and volume of that particular journal. For example, in 2021, February, I got some acceptance, the online version, but it got listed in the regular volume and issue in 2022 only. So like that, there will be some delay, but getting the online version is sufficient for submitting your thesis, or even getting the acceptance is sufficient for your, submitting your thesis, or even submitting CV for your job placement and so on. So this is what the overall article publishing process we usually follow. I thought of starting the session with this slide, but I purposefully kept it in the end because I do not know whether I'll be getting enough time to cover everything. So that's the reason I kept these 2 slides as a buffer slide. I just want to highlight something here. If you look at this WhatsApp group message, They say that Combo 2020 works, 5 authors only for mechanical domain, 10 UGC paper publication, 10 Scopus paper publication, 1 book publication with ISBN, 1 patent publication, author names rostered model based on. Anybody interested, contact me. This is a kind of advertisement that is going around in our WhatsApp groups and other social media platform. Don't get into this sort of traps. At the end of the day, they may be publishing some plagiarized work in some of the recently included Scopus journal or UGC Care journal, and there is a high probability that the journal may be removed from that particular list later point of time. So don't get into this sort of trap. So better you look for better journal. You get in touch with your supervisor, and then you get to know the kind of top journals that is available in the literature. Based on that, you take a call where you want to publish your paper. And another news article says that it's a bit old only, 2019 post. Indians top contributors to fake journals, UGC to crack down. That's the reason why UGC has created this careless business and so on. Then research published in pay and published journals won't count, UGC panel. These are some of the news headings. I just want to project it here just to create some awareness. This is coming from one of the Nature journal. Study reporting in predatory journal group. India is topping the list actually. This is as far as 2019 data is concerned. India is topping the list in terms of publishing the papers in predatory journal. This is one of the core reasons why UGC is silent on PhD regulation 2022, where there were no mention on publishing a paper before submission of the thesis. Indirectly, they're saying that you need to publish the paper. It doesn't mean that you should not publish the paper. Unless you publish the paper, you won't get the jobs in the job market. So that is the reason why, I mean, majorly they have removed this particular class from the recent PhD regulation, that is 2022 regulation. So with this note, I'll close the session. So this slide will help you to understand how to red flag or spot some of the predatory publishers or predatory journals or fake journals. When in doubt, check Jeffrey Beall's list to spot scammers. You go to this Jeffrey Beall's list. There also the fake journal lists are available. Like no standard identifiers like ISSN or DOIs. For example, if the published articles are not carrying any DOI number, that is digital object identifier numbers, means definitely you have to doubt that particular journal credibility. Then scope of the journal is too wide. For example, there are journals I have seen, International Journal of Management, Engineering, then Commerce, something like that. If you find this set of journals, definitely you have to doubt those set of journals basically. Then no transparency about article processing charges. Through Gmail account only, they manage everything. They say that you pay 15,000, tomorrow I'll send you the acceptance and so on. Again, don't get into those sort of traps. Then poor online presence. It is not indexed by any of the major indexing authorities like Scopus or Web of Science, or not even published in reputed publishers like Sage, Springer, T&F, and then widely elsewhere and so on. If that is the case, again, you have to doubt those sort of journals. The journal is not well indexed. Already I have mentioned this point. Officials of the journals use email addresses of a free email supplier like Gmail and so on. Again, you have to doubt those sort of journal publishing houses' credibility. So with this, I'm closing the session. I'll take another 10 minutes for answering your questions. If at all you have any questions, please feel free to come to the live chat. I'm happy to answer your questions. Meanwhile, let me see the chat window. So already people have started to ask for feedback. Otherwise, they don't get the certificate. Can we send same article to more than one journal at the same time? No, ma'am. Strict no. Shamina Banu, ma'am. Strict no. Don't do that. Please don't do that. It's completely unethical. And there's a high probability that because of this reason also your paper may be getting rejected from from both the journals. Then Shamina Banu, sometimes we won't get any acknowledgement from publisher. Acknowledgement in the sense your paper is published in that particular journal, no, that is sufficient. Need not to get any acknowledgement or certificate. So you get by default automatic reply when you submit the manuscript to some of the standard editorial boards like manuscriptcentral.com and so on. Then Khadija Farhana, sir, is it possible to do bibliometric analysis on borrowing theories from? No, no. Bibliometric analysis is a tool where you are trying to look at the past information about based on the empirical papers or some other papers. But I'm not sure again, it is depending upon the keyword only. Usually, even if they are borrowing the theory, I don't think so they would have explicitly disclosed by saying that we have borrowed this theory from this particular journal. So unless you have a sound keyword, doing bibliometric analysis on this particular methodological theme is really difficult. But I'm not saying that it is not possible, maybe possible. Yeah, any other questions? I'm getting only wonderful session. Thank you. Very informative sort of messages.
So, when
Journal list, sir, in CARE journal. See, I
Hello.
never look at the CARE journal.
Excuse me, sir.
I'm just answering Ramesh sir question. You look at the Scopus and Web of Science Index journal everywhere. I mean, so far I have published close to 19 papers. I have not spent not even ₹1 for publication, except the grammar checking and the editing part. So I can't suggest any journal unless I know from which domain you are coming. Even if I know that particular domain, if I'm not coming from the same domain, I can't suggest any journal, professor. Then yeah, yes, ma'am. Anmol, ma'am. Yeah, please, ma'am.
So there are some journals which are listed in the Scopus and Web of Science, but when we check for the Chicago journal ranking, sometimes we are not able to get that from that repository or ranking.
Shimaga journal is different from Scopus and Web of Science, ma'am. It doesn't mean that if something is not coming in Shimaga means it's not a good journal. So you look at, you go by Web of Science, ma'am. That is one of the decent indexing mechanism. You can blindly trust the quality.
Sir, does it mean that all the files that we can see in the Web of Science index list is quality journal?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we need to check for its?
No, you go with SSA and SCA, ma'am. So Social Science Citation Index and Science Citation Index. Both the indexings are really standard index, and blindly you can trust the quality, ma'am.
Okay. ABDC list also.
ABDC also you can't trust it, ma'am. One day you can find some journal in B list, then after 2 years or 1 year you may not be finding the same journal in the B list. And recently I came to know that even without getting Scopus indexing also there are some journals available in ABDC.
Okay, sir.
Probably they might have influenced one or other way to include their journal in ABDC list, but later definitely that may be removed from the list, ma'am. Don't trust ABDC also.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Then any other questions? Sir, what is your opinion about using an already implemented scale for data collection? Which article will have more acceptance, self-developed scale or already implemented? See, self-developed scale means you have to follow the scale development process. If you are following scale development process, I mean, really, you can add more value to your research work. In turn, there is a high chance that you may get acceptance also. But if you are using standard scale, that's fine. If the relationships are completely new, if the hypotheses are something interesting, then there is a high probability that you may get acceptance also. I can't give you yes or no sort of answer here. That is again depending upon your research problem, professor. Then Achyuta Kumar, all this, yeah. Sir, if there is no reply received after the average time for the first decision, what to do if they are not replying to the mail also? Tricky question, ma'am. You better get in touch with the editorial office or editor directly. As a solution I can recommend here. Then Sumaya CV, sir, sometimes we got rejections without expressing any comments from the journal, but at the same time they are appreciating our work. Then how can we identify the issue? See, politely they may be rejecting your paper, but rejection reason could be plagiarism or lack of contribution or lack of fit to the journal or the points which I have mentioned in the desk rejection reasons. Then is publication in working paper is worthy than publishing in international journals? Working paper is a kind of pipeline work which you are publishing it in the website somewhere or SSRN or in your website itself. That is not equivalent to international journal. So you have to further submit that working paper to a international journal. Then Mohammed Shamil, thank you. Yeah, thank you only. How to justify for integrating two different theories? How to make The literature review cohesive when integrating two different theories. Dev Prasad sir, let me show you a reference. Please go through that reference. You go to my resources page. You go to my resources page. Here you have a paper on see new ways of seeing theory integration across disciplines, and then integrating theories in AMJ articles. You read these two references, you will get some clarity, Professor. Dev Prasad sir, there's an answer for your question. Then Deepa, yeah, Janita, can the social science people can publish in? Yeah, possible. I have a couple of papers published in social science journals. Let me show you my list. This is social science citation index. This is also, this is also, this is also, then this is also, this is also, this is simple Scopus only. This is also, this is also, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, then this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, except only one simply Scopus indexed. Everything else is Web of Science index journals only. I have my papers. Yeah, anything else? Can we get the recordings of this session? That you need to ask the coordinator. I don't have any issue to share this recording with the participants. No problem. They can share it. I'm giving
okay,
the
sir, we will give.
Yeah, yeah. Can we put our paper in repository? What sort of repository, Janita ma'am? Can you elaborate? What sort of repository, ma'am? PPT, yeah, I can send it, not an issue. I'll give it to Shafit sir. Further, we can also forward the same thing to the participants. Social archive, like SSRN. Yeah, you can. In SSRN, if it is a preprint version, you don't get into copyright issue. After the publication, if you are keeping something, means you will get into copyright issue, ma'am. Then Dev Prasad sir, you told that you have something to talk about plagiarism at the end of the session. Hardly I have 1 minute. I don't think so. Now I'll be able to discuss anything on this issue, Dev Prasad sir. Sorry for that. Yeah, anything else? So if there are no more questions, thank you so much for your wonderful participation. And I mean, after a long time in one of the online meeting, I could see many people are active actually. In most of the online meetings, what is happening is they just mute themselves and then they go and do their own job. They don't listen to the talk, but at least here I could see some active participation from the participant side. Otherwise, I don't think so. I would be receiving these many messages in the chat box. Thank you so much for your wonderful and kind participation. And thanks to Shafit sir and his college management principal, principal, for readily accepting this particular initiative proposed by Shafit sir, part of his IQAC activity. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So, shall we have a formal vote of thanks?
Okay, fine, ma'am, fine. Yeah.
Ma'am,
Please, ma'am.
ma'am. Hello.
Respected resource
Participants, please
person,
note
Murugan.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay,
Participants,
sir, you
please
can.
note all registered participants will get an e-certificate within 10 days to your registered email. Thank you.
So, no need to fill the feedback form. Okay, sir.
Okay, I invite Dr. Amida P. Mani for opposing vote of thanks.
Okay, respected resource person of the day, Dr. P. Murugan, IQAC coordinator, Dr. Shafir, and all participants. It is actually a great experience to have a session by Murugan sir. And I am extremely honored to call this a day with this Thanksgiving session. Sir Murugan sir started with a clear-cut plan. He had clearly mentioned all the procedures through which we can publish a quality article to care listed or whatever kinds of journal we want to get into. He presented the research questions, then the why this publication is important from the point of view of faculty members, then why we should keep ourselves away from plagiarism and the ways to avoid self-plagiarisms, and everything was accounted in a very detailed way. I'm extremely thankful to you, sir. I thank Shafir sir for organizing the webinar, our principal for giving an opportunity to organize the webinar, Murugan sir for sparing all these time, 2.5 hours, for showing the patience to interact with all the participants, for giving clarifications, timely suggestions and everything. And I should say that the highlight of the day is really the illustrations from your own experience that made it a really fruitful day. I thank all the participants for the lively interaction and also for your participation. Thank you all once again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. And I also share the PPT with Shafiq sir, and then he will also forward the same with
Thank you, sir.
participants. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye.